again, a thanks to Mosaic Forest Management for sponsoring the luncheon today. And thank you. Thank you, Minister. And I'd also like to recognize our head table. So I'll ask everyone to hold their applause until the end, but maybe you can stand as I announce you. So today we have Luke Showerty, CEO of Wood Fiber LNG, Darcy Henderson, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Mosaic Forest Management. We have Elder Sandra with Systemic First Nation, who gave us such a nice blessing earlier. Quatuma Cole-Sayers, Executive Director with Clean Energy BC. Of course, Dallas Smith, the President of Nanwakolas Council. Chief Chris Roberts, Chief Counselor of Weewakam First Nation. The Honourable Sheila Malcolmson, Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, Government of BC. And the Honourable Lana Popham, Minister of Agriculture and Food. And last but not least, we're very privileged to have the Honourable David Eby, KC Premier, Government of BC. So please join me in a big round of applause. And so now if I could have Darcy Henderson from Mosaic CEO to come up and introduce our keynote today.
This was actually set up for the Premier, I think. I'm not sure about that. So this is what you do. You buy somebody lunch and then you have to introduce them. I'm going to think about this next year. But really just an amazing event so far. And as pointed out, my name is Darcy Henderson. I'm with Mosaic Forest Management. Really honored to be here today on the traditional territories of the Snow. Oh my gosh, I was really focused on that too. Snuneymuxw First Nation. And thank you again for this event. I really do. This is my first time at IROC, and to understand the amount of history that's here that I haven't been here before, I have learned so much today. So it's been an incredible series of presentations. Mosaic is a land management company that's 100% Canadian owned. We are predominantly on the coast of BC. It gives us the privilege of working with and among 48 different nations on the coast of BC and the communities across this land. It is a privilege. I see this really as an opportunity for us to share experiences, and that's what I've heard today. It has been eye-opening to understand how we come together. We really demonstrate to folks how us forging partnerships, creating environments that really do develop into enduring, meaningful partnerships where we can demonstrate that it's not just a business that's being ran, it's actually providing educational and work opportunities for the communities and the members of those communities. It is possible, and I've heard that today. Our keynote speaker, we need leadership when we're into these challenging times. And our keynote speaker, Premier David Eby, has demonstrated the commitment that we require to get through these struggles. I do believe that we're poised. We've got the right minds in the room to create thoughtful, meaningful approaches to the challenges ahead of us. So with no further ado, the Honourable David Eby, just freshly back from his trade mission to Asia, where he continued to promote responsibly sourced natural resources. So please join me in welcoming the Premier of British Columbia, the Honourable David Eby.
Thanks so much, Darcy, for the kind introduction. It's great to be here on Snuneymuxw territory. It's great to be back. I have the privilege of working with Doug White, the third Kwasselton former chief of Snuneymuxw, and it's a great honor to be here with him today on the territory. The nation is doing some amazing work in partnership with government and on their own, and just glad to be here in Nanaimo with my colleagues. Sheila and Lana as well. First of all, let me say thank you for the affirming title of this conference, IROC. I need to tell you, I got a Father's Day card from my son that said, "Dad, you're still cool, it's just not as obvious anymore." He's 10. It's a bad sign. I'm really glad to be here today, and the timing couldn't be better. As you heard Darcy say, the Minister of Agriculture and I were just on the road in Korea, in Japan, in Malaysia. And I'm sure I don't have to tell anyone in this room, you know, you're reading the same news that I am. The instability in the world that we're seeing right now. And for many of us, that kind of instability, we've been feeling it for a while. But you know, when our biggest trading partner to the south is threatening us as if we're an enemy in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, trying to attack our economy in key areas like softwood, they're so important to British Columbia, like directly threatening and aiming to destroy that industry. But you know, visiting those countries, you can really feel the vibe there as well. Many of these countries have constrained market access, limited resources. The volume, just the number of people, I feel a bit country mouse saying it, but just apartment block after apartment block of people, the populations of these countries, huge compared to our home here. And the anxiety that they have about their supply of energy, about their supply of food, about their supply of critical resources, metals and minerals to be able to run their factories is very real and very palpable. And in this moment of profound instability globally, I believe that we have an incredible opportunity here in British Columbia. British Columbia is going to be the economic engine of Canada going forward. And this is for a number of reasons that I know this to be true. One is the experience that I just had in Asia, hearing firsthand from these countries how important our partnership is with them, the major projects that they're working on with us. The second reason is obviously our geography, access to the ports, the ability to face about 2/3 of the world's population out of our ports here in British Columbia. We need strong partnerships with other provinces and territories to be able to get their goods to market. The resources we have here that we're so blessed with in this province. But most importantly, it's the people of British Columbia, and in this room, I want you to know that I know that none of this vision will be realized without strong partnerships with Indigenous people. And you know, the fascinating part about the conversations in these countries that are so far away was how well versed they were in the realities of British Columbia, both what our government's expectations are in terms of partnership with First Nations and environmental protection as being key priorities, addressing the climate crisis as being a key priority. Everybody that we met with knew that as just, we were starting from that base and shared understanding. And the interest and the conversation internationally has really moved past where it used to be, which is like, oh, we'd like to invest in Canada, but isn't it impossible with the First Nations and all the issues and the courts and everything? That wasn't the conversation at all. The conversation was actually, we have these partnerships already. And we want to make sure that you know that we value that and we understand the importance of partnership and how to work with nations that we're bringing ourselves up to speed. And I think, again, that is entirely due to the people in this room, the work that you've done, the outreach that you've done with global investors that are interested in building our province, building our economy. And I want to thank you for your important leadership on that as well. For our government, in this moment, the enormity of the challenge that we face with our biggest trading partners, the United States and China, both and separately attacking different sectors of our economy. China, seafood, the United States, softwood lumber, and threatening other sectors, new tariffs on aluminum. You know, the enormity of that challenge of our major trading partners saying, of withdrawing or retaliating against Canada, means that we as a province have to act as quickly as we can to confirm and to deliver the opportunity that's in front of us. Some of that work, some of that understanding resulted in Bills 14 and 15 being introduced in our legislature. Bill 14 relating to our energy regulator having oversight over clean energy projects. Bill 15 about delivering public and private projects faster through our regulatory systems. And some of that I'll talk about a little later in my remarks, is about how we're going to work more closely with all of you in the room here. But I know that Bills 14 and 15 caused a significant amount of anxiety among a number of people, particularly in Indigenous communities in the province. And I'd like to understand, I like to say I understand, but I can't fully understand where that comes from. What I understand, what is told to me, and the reason I can't understand that fully is because I haven't had that experience, but the history of government, when government says we need to move faster in British Columbia, we need to move faster in Canada, the history is that means we need to ignore Indigenous people, we need to push them out of the way, relocate them, ignore their concerns, and that's how we're going to move faster. And so when we say we want to fast track projects in Bill 14 and 15, well, inevitably that must mean that government wants to repeat that history, that we've reached the end of our partnership with nations and now we just got to get the job done. Nothing could be further from the truth. Bill 14, about clean energy projects going through our energy regulator, is about ensuring that our clean energy sector has the same approval channels that our oil and gas sector has. We believe strongly that electrification is a way that we're going to drive down emissions in this province. Clean energy projects are a key part of that. And the way to achieve that, we believe, is to have the same approvals process, the same advantages, and the same obligations that the oil and gas sector has through the energy regulator. That's all. It doesn't take away from the obligations we have around engagement, around consultation, around participation with nations. Bill 15, we had a school we were trying to build. It was held up for a year because a community needed to amend their official community plan in order for the site to be approved, for the building permit to be issued to build the school. So that community wasn't just deprived of a new school for a year, but the cost of the school went up about 30% over that year. And we just can't afford to do that. Our population grew by 300,000 people in 2 years. We need more schools, more hospitals, more roads, more transit. We need to do it faster. And on private sector projects, one of the most challenging conversations I have is with Indigenous-led projects when the proponents are saying, look, can't you guys move faster? We want to get this thing going. We say, well, we have to go through, we're not able to find that path to get it approved faster through our own system. So one of the commitments we've made is to ensure in the regulations around Bill 15, when we're talking about those projects on the land and Crown land, that we ensure that there is a full and supportive and consenting First Nations partner that is delivering that project, that we won't do it in the absence of consent. And the reason for that is I don't believe that practically in British Columbia in the year 2025 that we can fast track without full Indigenous cooperation and support on the project. Because we've made commitments under the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People Act that we passed, but also we have constitutional obligations that come to us under Section 35. So I just wanted to be here in person to say to you directly that these bills are about us working together to achieve our shared aims, which is responsible development in partnership of our province as a whole, whether they're public or private projects, and that it will only, as long as I'm Premier, will only ever be in full partnership with Indigenous people. And it's not just words. You know, I am very proud of the work done by so many nations on BC Hydro's call for power, where in just my short time as Premier, our government has awarded more clean energy projects than the previous government did in 16 years. Every single one of those projects are almost 50% owned by Indigenous people. Only 9 of the 10 are majority Indigenous owned. And this is a demonstration of how we can grow our economy, do it in partnership, and do it in a way that lifts everybody's boat. The electrification will reduce emissions, create economic opportunities across the province, thousands of jobs in every corner of British Columbia. It is a win for everybody, and it enables further development in our province that will create even more jobs. It is a profoundly exciting program that the first phase represents $3 billion of investment in our province. We have because of the success of that program and because of some of the programs we've seen in Alberta, we have a $1 billion equity program to support nations with development of projects that you have identified, big and small alike. Our program will be slightly different than the federal government's program. Our program will require that these are greenfield or they are new projects. They're either additions to existing projects or they're entirely new projects, not to buy into existing projects. But with that said, we're very hopeful to be able to share details about that in the fall, and I'm looking forward to launching that with you to ensure that we're doing even more of this work together. On mining, we had an amazing cooperative, mutually supportive announcement with the Tahltan, with the Taku River Tlingit, and up in the northwest, around the development of mining resources in that part of the world. What we're doing is the nations up there have done incredible work around land use planning over multiple years. We're going to take 12 months. We're going to work together. We're going to incorporate that land use planning into the province's land use rules. And then we're going to work together on the development, and the potential there is $30 billion in mining investment in that region. But the nations up there have some very reasonable asks of us about how this is going to happen. They said too often mining has taken place and we haven't seen the full benefit that we should. And so we need some basic things. We need a pharmacy in our community. We need the road to be improved. We need a community center. And these are the kinds of things the provincial government can partner on. And for the mining companies, it's been about how can we participate together when the projects go ahead in the benefits that flow from the projects for long-term jobs and prosperity for the nations as well. Finally, in forestry, here's a sector that has faced profound challenge, very low prices, beetle kill, forest fire, attacks directly from the president. There's a national security investigation into our forest industry right now so that the president can impose additional duties on softwood lumber. And yet, amazing things happening, particularly in First Nations partnerships and First Nations-led initiatives in the province. We've got the Nadli-Witen First Nation that has projects called Deadwood, I understand, taking very low value, traditionally very low value forest products and turning them into high value products that are sought on the world stage. I was with Chief John Jack of Hwayet First Nation. They have a forest tile project that is, they're huge in Japan. They delivered a container of what they call forest tiles, which are these tiles made out of wood. They're beautiful, used for decoration and wood accents, and they're selling very well in Japan. And then there are nations that are leading in forestry practices, like Chislata First Nation with their new harvesting methods that are showing so much promise. So there are amazing things happening across the province. I believe strongly that our partnership with First Nations will result in economic growth and prosperity for generations to come for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous British Columbians. The work has been happening for a long time, but together we can supercharge that work, and in fact, we have to. We have an obligation as British Columbians and as Canadians to fulfill our responsibility at a time when the rest of the country is facing huge pressures around manufacturing in Ontario and Quebec, steel mills in Ontario and Quebec, massive job losses. Our obligation as Canadians is to step up and do our part, and our obligation as British Columbians is to support our kids and to deliver strong public services that are funded. But we can only achieve those goals if we do it together, which is why I'm so glad to be here at this conference. And if it were up to me, it'd be called We Rock instead of IROC, because I really look forward to doing that in partnership with you. Thanks very much for your time.
Hello. My nervousness from this morning is being replaced by some potential cheekiness, so this could be fun. All your people, my people are probably saying, what is he doing? But thank you for being here. As the founder of IROC, I'll take that into consideration for We Rock. But we do. You talk about Bill 14 and Bill 15 and the Land Act. I was able to touch base with Nathan Cullen a couple weeks ago, and we had a laugh about just how challenging it was when the Land Act was being introduced after the HIDA deal and all those sorts of things. And well, I've been fortunate enough to sit in a seat where we've been developing evolutionary agreements that have led to this position. So as some of the other nations have shown less concern about it, I'm sort of in that boat myself, because you're building a set of tools in your toolbox. I've got a set of tools in my toolbox. And over the last number of years, First Nations people in this province has refined their set of tools. And so instead of reacting to what government's doing, we're now sort of saying, how can we collaborate? Here's the tools I have to get a project done. Here's the tools you have to get a project done. Where do you see some of the integration in that? I mean, it's easy for you and I to say because we've been part of the development of some of these things, but to the general public, that's raising a lot of concern on all sides of the coin around this. What would your response to them be on just not quite knowing how this has been evolutionary? This isn't something you just invented a couple weeks ago. I mean, Doug White's really good, but even he can't do something in that short time frame. So over the years, we've just kept building more and more into this. So just some of your thoughts specifically on, how we take our sets of tools and work together.
Yeah, I think when I think about where this has worked really well, it's around the provincial government. When we're doing land use planning, not for a particular project, but over the area or the territory of a particular nation or group of nations. Because when we do that land use planning, we bring all the tools together. We bring the local knowledge, the local concerns. Around the table we've had nations, industry, local government, provincial government, all working together. And what it does is it maximizes the use of the knowledge and the different tools we have. And it reduces the duplication of every permit is a unique, we're starting from ground zero. It sends a message to industry, this is the area where development is going to go ahead, this is the area that's protected. So there's no kind of lost time looking at areas that are just off limits. And it creates the potential for real efficiencies. And that's what we need. We need to make sure that so when I think about the Northwest work that I mentioned in my remarks, it's about protecting the land, it's about achieving our goal of protecting 30% of the land base by 2030. It's about Indigenous prosperity and building community. It's about provincial prosperity and delivering public services funded by resources. But the base of it, the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation of the house, is the land use planning. And once that's done, it enables all these other pieces to flow from it.
I'm really glad you put it that way, because you and I joined at then Prime Minister Trudeau on making British Columbia's commitment to the 30 by 30 challenge, both federally, provincially, as Indigenous communities. We stood up and supported that. The work that we did in the Great Bear Rainforest, where we protected 3.1 million hectares of the last temperate rainforest. So all that's in there, and I'm very proud of the career that many of us have developed through spatial planning. I think that's one of the keys of the remarks today, is whether you're going to protect something or develop something, spatial planning is so important. But the one thing that I realized, Premier, is as we protected all these watersheds and as we've started the Marine Protected Areas strategy and we've done all these things to achieve those goals, we weren't able to build houses. We weren't able to build elder centers. We weren't able to build youth centers. And that's why a balanced economy is so important. So I guess my next question to you would be along those lines, as someone who practices this every day. I'm still in the trenches dealing with this, as a majority of the chiefs and leaders in this room and business leaders are. But there seems to be a disconnect between where the civil service is, and I know I'm going to get a message from Shannon or someone saying, hey, you should have given me a heads up about that. But what are you going to do as Premier to help get get the civil service lined up with where the political commitments that we're all making. Because I think that's really where, and I don't mean it in a blame anybody, but that's where I think that's where the fear is coming, because we haven't been able to get it over the line in a few more places. So just some of your thoughts on how your political visions and aspirations are going to be carried out through the civil service.
Well, one of the key pieces with the civil service and our relationship with nations, I think, has been, and I'll take this on as actually the political side. We have not yet gotten to the place where we have a transparent and fully understandable framework when we sit down with nations to talk about a particular project, whether it's a forestry project or a mining project or an energy project or whatever, that there's a clear understanding of what's on the table, of the framework that we're talking about, of the resources the province is willing to put on the table, about mutual participation and project upside once it's approved. And that's our responsibility. We need to work with nations to come up with those frameworks. Forestry is the one that I feel is the furthest along, and a lot of work has happened on that. But we've got work to do on mining, because we can create the possibility of instability and other problems when we have one deal for one nation over here and another deal for another nation over there, and someone's like, well, why did they get that? And like, what is, did they say something special? They have a particular approach that worked better than our. So we need to have a consistent approach when it comes to our side, so we're not creating divisions, but also so that, and everyone's able to know going in what's available. So that's one piece, and that will greatly assist the public service. The second piece with the public service is they're very nervous. And so if they get inconsistent signals from government, or if they feel that there's a politically sensitive decision, it's very easy to say, well, I'm going to just put that permit on hold, and I'm going to be dealing with these permits instead. One of the pieces of Bill 15 is it allows us to grab permits for key projects and put them on top of the pile and say, we've got to deal with this one. And that enables us to be able to work with nations and say, well, we're still waiting on this permit from you guys, like what is going on with that thing? And we didn't have that ability before to do that. And so ensuring that we're providing that political cover for the public service, saying, look, I know you feel anxious about this, but we'll make this decision as politicians. We'll do it in a transparent way. We'll declare this one a project of provincial significance, and we're going to approve it. And then you don't have to worry about it, will, I think, help address some of these things.
No, and I think that's tremendous, because we've seen a lot of turnover both in the senior civil service over the last few years, which is important because times change. You turn the page onto new things, but we haven't quite seen the clarity on some of these reconciliation discussions. So it's nice that there's some new faces in there that are maybe looking at it through a different ray of light than may have been done traditionally in the past. But I think one of the other questions that lines up with that for me, and now I'm really going to make people nervous, but that's okay. I got the mic in my hand, so we're okay till next year. Our relationship with Ottawa. As I talked about, you and I got to stand with Prime Minister Trudeau and make our commitment to 30 by 30. But yet Ottawa is still in a position where they're throwing challenges in front of us provincially. And I'll use aquaculture as an example. Right now, Ottawa has decided how we're going to do things 5 years from now and how we're not going to do things from, What is going to be your role in helping Indigenous communities bridge that gap with Ottawa on decisions that they're making that affect our coast, that affect our territories that we've managed time immemorial, all those sorts of things. So, I know as we came together as Canada, it was funny because the election was so divisive in some ways, but it was also bringing us together in so many ways. Is there still a little bit of that elbows up mentality as we make sure Canada, understands the unique challenges British Columbia has with its coastline, with its forests, with its protection? Just some of your thoughts on how we rebuild a solid working relationship with Canada that has that balance that we all talk about, but the policy decisions that have been made don't seem to get us there.
Yeah, it's still early days for the Carney administration, and I'm not sure how that work is going to go. The Prime Minister has been very focused on international relations and on
projects of national significance. So I can say from the economic side, and for people in this room that are interested in resource development and concerned about what is the federal process going to look like and so on, we're getting very clear signals from the federal government, from the law that they introduced in the parliament around projects of national significance, to the private conversations where there's support from nations, where the province is ready to go, they want to go. They want one approval process for projects. They want to go as quickly as possible, and they want our support in doing that. But for larger questions like HIDA, I think I'm proud of the work we did on HIDA. That we brought the feds along with us, and I don't know yet. We haven't seen signals yet about whether we're going to be able to have that kind of influence on this. We've reached out on the aquaculture issues specifically to say we need to know what the plan is here. These are communities that are hugely dependent on this industry. And so maybe that will be the test where we get a sense about what our relationship's going to be on this. But yeah, I think the jury's still out about what that's going to look like in terms of larger, whether it's treaty or whether it's economic agreements or whether it's self-government agreements or whether it's title recognition or even whether it's additions to reserve or the basics, like where that's going to fall on the government's priority list.
That's tremendous. Between every dark cloud, there's always a silver lining. Maybe that's been my Achilles heel over the years, is just focusing on the silver lining. I mean, here this conference is about people who vertically integrated the resource economy with Indigenous communities. And so as I talked about the tools we have in the toolbox, the tools you have in the toolbox, I'd just like to talk about the environmental assessment a little bit. I mean, we know that we're trying to get some projects moving where they make sense, where there's willing dance partners, if you will. What is your government's thoughts? And this is mean because I should have talked to Minister Davidson about this, but I'm probably going to get a few text messages saying, dude, what the heck? But, you've said that some of these projects don't have to go through a specific EA as they did traditionally, but First Nations communities are going to demand some sort of environmental assessment process, not only for our own communities to understand why we're making some of these investments and these opportunities, but more so for our neighbors. So how do you see we can keep these discussions proactive and not get divisive where we all think that we have a veto to stop each other? I mean, I know when UNDRIP, became a reality, everybody started talking about these vetoes, but in a true collaborative relationship, that's not how they're built. So just what's your thoughts on, how you're going to work with us when, we've all agreed on a project, but there's some steps that are going to have to be made. Just what's your thoughts on that?
So the Environmental Assessment Act is something that it was one of the first laws that we co-developed with nations. It has a lot of strengths to it. It has some big challenges. The strengths are, I think it has achieved our goals of really evaluating for a given project whether the environmental costs are worth the squeeze in terms of the project. That's the function of the Environmental Assessment Act. Where it's fallen down is around participating Indigenous nations. The number one complaint I get from nations is this project is in the heart of our territory. It is. I can look out my window, I can see this project. And there are 15 different nations, including one that's 500 kilometers away, that have rights that are affected by this. It could be a hunting right or a fishing right, and they have the exact same participation rights in the environmental assessment process that our nation does. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So we have to address that issue. We have to figure out how and the Supreme Court of Canada said don't do the postage stamp rights approach. So we have to figure out what does it mean when the project is across the street from your house versus it's on a river that flows 500 kilometers down and affects your fishing rights in terms of participation rights in the environmental assessment process. We've got to figure that out together. The second is the objection process. The objection process was set up in order for nations to raise concerns. We're worried about water in our territory. We don't think you've adequately considered this. And the timeline for objections can run through the full environmental assessment process, including up to right before a final decision is about to be issued. And so we have to figure out, in order to have predictable timelines, which is important for you and for us and for industry, we have to figure out how to get the objections all out on the table and dealt with within the time frame of the environmental assessment process. Those are government's concerns. I'm sure there are many concerns from the nation side. We're going to do a review of the Environmental Assessment Act together and address some of these things. And we'll be engaging on some of these issues this summer, I hope.
So I see the time frame is getting up. My people are getting antsy. Your people are getting antsy. But I like that. I kind of thrive on that a little bit. I love making people more uncomfortable than they make me. I think that's how I've made it through this mess of the tug of war that my career's
I don't
been
do it
through.
deliberately, but I feel like I have the same.
You should try. You should really try once in a while, you know. Take that for a ride. But, you know, I want to end this on just something, you know, you and I have gotten together a few times, got to know each other a little bit over the years, and I probably should have spent the 20 minutes that we had together in the green room talking about some of these questions, but we were talking about our kids. You know, how do you feel that, like, you got home from a huge trades mission? Like, how do you find the time to just make sure that you get, you know, to put each of the kids to bed and all that? Just, you know, it's completely off topic, but we all have kids. We all work tremendous hours. We all have tremendous pressures, but at the end of the day, we do this for our kids. So just a little bit of thought on trying to be the premier who's not as cool, but as cool. Just your thoughts on that.
I didn't expect you to say I wasn't as cool. That was sort of it was a funny card my kid gave me, you know? Oh, dang.
Well, you're very hip in my books.
Oh,
My
thanks,
kids
Alice.
think you're really
Thanks,
cool.
Yeah, I feel, you know, there's so many, I imagine a number of you in this room, so many parents who are away from home, you know, you're maybe working remotely or you have to travel for work, whatever. So I feel a little self-conscious complaining, and I'm not. It's hard. It's hard to be away from the kids. Really feel it now. It's interesting, when they were younger, it was easier because they weren't as smart. We get smarter slowly, very slowly at our house. But
you're
you know,
gonna get
for
a couple what the hell texts.
No. Well, he gave me a crappy card, so fair game. So for our 10-year-old, I mean, that's like, he feels it when I'm away, when we're not able to, like, sit down together and watch a Marvel movie or whatever, or just hang out, more than the younger ones. And so it's getting harder for sure, and it's hard to find the balance. I put way too much on my amazing wife, and she's an incredible person. There was an article in a paper I forwarded her, which was like, you know, the hidden benefits of marrying well. I feel like I really married well. I definitely married beyond over my head. Yeah, even though she's very tiny. And, you know, just huge appreciation for, it's a team. This premiership is a team, and I really feel it. So thanks for the group counseling session, and I appreciate that, Talis.
Thank you so much. We've always appreciated your ability to come talk to us when it's needed, and we look forward to having you again. And we just look forward to working through this stuff. I mean, there's a whole lot of challenges in front of us, and either we can turn and say it's too hard, or we can just dig our shoulders in and get through it. And so I really appreciate the fact that you and the province of British Columbia are ready to, you know, go through that trail. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you soon. And go home and hug your kid.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Premier, and thank you, Dallas. That was a great conversation. So do you have a small gift for you, Premier, before you go? And I guess with everyone else, I'd like to let you know you're dismissed. Then our staff can clear the tables, and we'll resume promptly at 2:30, please. Thank you.